In this video, I'll be going over the top 10 fundamentals of Pokemon Go that pro players follow. As someone who has been playing Pokemon Go consistently since the beginning, there are certain things about the game that I wish I knew when I first started. These are what I like to call Pokemon Go Fundamentals, and they are what separates veteran pro players from beginners. If you are someone who started playing Pokemon Go recently and you want to elevate your gameplay, then the 10 fundamentals in this video will help you get there. This isn't a beginner's guide per se, but think of it as the next step once you get the hang of the game. If you find this video to be helpful, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this one. Okay, so the first fundamental I wanted to talk about is what I'm going to call delayed gratification. Basically, you will want to be patient with almost all aspects of Pokemon Go. You will want to hold off on powering up Pokemon or evolving them. The reason for this is because you will eventually get a better version of that specific Pokemon, and you will want to spend your resources powering up that one. What do I mean by this? Well, in case you didn't know, each Pokemon is different from others of the same species. If you have two Pikachus, for example, one of them is likely stronger or weaker than the other. This is because of something called IVs. These are individual values of each Pokemon and determine their final attack, defense, and health points when they are fully leveled out. You can find your Pokemon's IVs when you appraise them. Each IV stat ranges from 0 to 15, and this is the number of that stat that is added onto their base stats. Pokemon with a perfect IV rating will have all three stat values completely full, or 15 points in each of them. If this sounds confusing to you, basically, just look for Pokemon with all three bars full or as close to full as possible when you appraise it. This leads me to the next fundamental of Pokemon Go, and that is developing a habit of appraising Pokemon. This is absolutely important, yet many players neglect to do it. If you are just transferring all of your caught Pokemon before appraising them, you run the risk of losing high IV Pokemon and those that are ideal for PvP. The reason why people skip out on appraising their Pokemon is typically because it is a long time sink. If you're going to sit there and appraise every single Pokemon in your collection, it is going to take an extremely long while. However, there are shortcuts to checking IVs that will save you a ton of time. If you click on the search bar in your Pokemon storage, you can actually filter all of your Pokemon based on their IVs. If you input the search string 4-star, it will only display perfect IV Pokemon. If you want to mass transfer all of your most recently caught Pokemon, but want to filter out perfect IVs and high IV Pokemon first, then use this search string. If you type in age 0 ampersand exclamation mark 4 star ampersand exclamation mark 3 star, then it will only display your most recently caught Pokemon that are not perfect IV or high IV. Be careful when mass transferring this way, because you will transfer potentially good PvP IV Pokemon. If you want to engage in PvP, then I would first check the IVs of Go Battle League meta Pokemon before using this search string. Alright, the next Pokemon Go fundamental is going to be an important one. You need to know when and how to spend your Pokécoins. This is the premium currency of Pokemon Go. Getting it requires you to spend a large amount of time battling gyms or spending real world money. Since you don't want to waste your hard-earned money on items you shouldn't be buying, knowing what to spend your Pokécoins on is a very important piece of knowledge to have. Simply put, you will only want to spend Pokécoins whenever there is a good bundle box. This includes the Great Box, Adventure Box, Explorer Box, etc. The key thing you will want to look for are premium raid passes or super incubators, but the Pokécoin cost of the bundle itself should be way more than the sum of its parts. For example, the current Great Raid box contains 15 raid passes for 999 Pokécoins. You are basically getting 5 passes for free after buying 10 of them. This is because each raid pass costs 100 Pokécoins, so you're getting 15 for the price of 10. These are the deals you should look for, and should be the only time you spend your Pokécoins. Another item you should spend your Pokécoins on are remote raid passes. Buying these typically don't have any discount, but they do allow you to raid from wherever you are at. I wouldn't say you should exclusively remote raid over in-person raids, but having a bunch of these on hand could be really handy. Finally, you should spend your Pokécoins on item bag space and Pokemon storage space. These specific upgrades can get pretty pricey, but they do pay for itself over time. You don't need to max out both of them, but you should spend your Pokécoins to get at least some of them. Now, the stuff you should never spend your Pokécoins on include generic items like Pokéballs, max potions, max revives, etc. This is because you get these items for free from spinning Pokéstops and gyms. Thus, you should only spend your Pokécoins on items you typically wouldn't get. Alright, now let's get into another super important fundamental of Pokemon Go. If you want the best experience with this game, you need to join an active community. On top of being able to interact with like-minded players, joining a community opens you up to raids, events, and gatherings. A good amount of Pokemon Go requires interaction with other players, so it's going to be difficult maximizing your gameplay without making friends who also play the game. One aspect in particular that gets much easier with a community is, of course, legendary raid battles. These are typically near impossible without a group, yet they always contain some of the best rewards and Pokemon. If you are not interested in doing in-person raids, you should still try to join a community in order to get in on remote raid invites. The best way to join a community is to go to a local hotspot during Wednesday raid hours or community days. See if there are other players walking around. They will be easy to spot. Build up the courage to walk up to them and ask them if they are in a Discord, chat group, or a Facebook group. Chances are, they are in a community that you can join. This is probably your best way to join a local community. Alright, the next Pokemon Go fundamental that I wanted to talk about involves keeping up with events and updates to the game. As I'm sure you know, Pokemon Go is constantly changing and evolving. Every week, there is typically some sort of in-game event or activity in the spotlight. Well, you'll want to be sure you know everything that is going on at any given point. You can do this by checking the News tab. Make a habit of checking this daily, so that you know what is going on. And of course, this is going to sound like a self-plug, but subscribe to YouTubers and content creators. Most of us are digging into every in-game event before and after they arrive. So if there is a specific detail for the event that you need to know about, then most YouTubers will typically let you know. Okay, now that we went over some fundamentals outside of Pokemon Go, let's now get into some gameplay mechanics. The next fundamental that I wanted to talk about is probably the most important skill you need to have in Pokemon Go, and that is mastering excellent curveball throws. This has got to be the most important skill you need to have. In almost all aspects of Pokemon Go's gameplay, catching Pokemon is a major part of it. In case you didn't know, your chances of the Pokemon staying in the ball vastly increases if you manage to land an excellent curveball throw. If you want to save on Pokeballs, this is the way you do it. This skill is even more imperative when it comes to catching legendary Pokemon. For every legendary that runs away, you are losing value on the raid pass that you spent. The easiest way for you to fix this is by consistently practicing your curveball throws. If you can hit an excellent curveball throw with every ball, then your collection of super powerful Pokemon will increase. Alright, for the next Pokemon Go fundamental, it is one that I don't see a lot of players talk about, but I do think it is absolutely important. As a Pokemon Go player, you need to be consistent with daily and weekly rewards. This includes several things, such as your daily bonuses for the first catch and Pokestop spin of the day, weekly research breakthrough, weekly adventure sync rewards, etc. If you maximize these aspects of Pokemon Go and keep up with them consistently, you will get extremely good rewards and some of the rarest Pokemon. I can't tell you how many times I would find out that players are skipping out on this area of the game. This is a massive mistake, considering how good the rewards are for doing them. Okay, let's get into the final 3 fundamentals that I wanted to talk about. The first of these is pretty straightforward. Having an extensive knowledge of the various type advantages and disadvantages will accelerate your success in gym battles, the Go Battle League, and raids. In case you didn't know, Pokemon types are what gives it strength versus others of different types. Some are pretty straightforward, and seem to resemble a game of rock, paper, scissors. Fire is weak against water, water is weak against grass, and grass is weak against fire. However, the true masters of Pokemon Go will know all of the type advantages and disadvantages of the more obscure types. This is what separates the good players from the mediocre. They will know what kind of Pokemon to use in whatever situation. This leads me to the next fundamental, and that is knowing the meta. Wait, what exactly is a meta? Well, it stands for most efficient tactic available, and in the context of Pokemon Go, it is basically the best of the best Pokemon to use in a given situation. The concept of meta is not new to gaming. If a game involves any kind of strategy or tactics, there will always be a strategy that will be considered the absolute best. But when it comes to Pokemon Go, there are several different metas for all of the various game modes that you need to consider. For example, if you are active in the Go Battle League, the best of the best Pokemon to use for PvP will be completely different in most circumstances with raid battles. Keep in mind that the list of top Pokemon changes often, but you can get a general idea as you continue to gain experience with the game. Probably the best way to keep up to date with whatever the meta is will be to do outside research. For the Go Battle League, pvpoke.com is an amazing resource. For raids, look up infographics or watch YouTube content that covers the best counters. Having a solid understanding of the various metas is how you elevate your gameplay from casual to hardcore. Even as a casual player, it is definitely going to be helpful information. Alright, now we finally have arrived at the last fundamental for this video. The number one thing you need to consider as a Pokemon Go player is to simply have fun with the game. Yeah, this is a pretty anticlimactic entry into this list, but for me personally, I think it is the most important. Remember, Pokemon Go is a game. Very often, we as players can get caught up in some of the negative aspects of a game like this, but we need to realize it is meant to be played for fun. I know a lot of you are already going to say something in the comments about this, but hear me out. You need to create your own reason for playing Pokemon Go. This game is surprisingly very complex. There are a lot of different activities and goals that will be unique to each player. There is a sandbox element to Pokemon Go, in that you basically have the freedom to create your own fun. For me, it is all about collecting. I want to get as many Shundos and Hundos as possible, regardless if they are relevant or not. Most of my time is dedicated towards picking them up, and the satisfaction that I feel whenever I do pick up a Shundo or Hundo keeps me motivated to continue playing. See, this is what I mean by everyone having a unique goal. There are players who want to be the best raider. There are others who are focused on getting platinum badges or a complete Pokedex. And then there are those who care deeply about PvP, and they are grinding away in the Go Battle League. Regardless of whatever your interests are, there is always something for you to work towards in Pokemon Go. Try to find it for yourself so that you have a reason to continue playing this game. So yeah, these were the fundamentals of Pokemon Go. Everything that I talked about in this video, I really wish I knew or thought about when I first started playing. Of course, there are always things about this game that are important to consider. So if there is a fundamental aspect of Pokemon Go that I failed to mention, definitely share it down below in the comments and let's have a great discussion. And if you ended up enjoying this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget that little bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And I want to give a quick shout out to my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support my channel in any way, big or small, then be sure to check out the links in the description below. For all my patrons, they get a permanent spot on my in-game friends list, so if you want to interact with me in some way, like with remote raids, then do consider becoming a patron on my Patreon. But yeah, that's going to be it. I'm Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.